identify with familial capital because I come from a very large family. Just on my mom's maternal side alone, there's about 175 of us, which is why I am always so grateful that anytime I want to do something, I have a cousin or an aunt and uncle that I could tap into to celebrate or just kind of touch base with to hang out. And I see that you have some responses in the chat, so I'll pass it back to you.
Thanks, Shay. And thank you, Jared, for sharing. So Jared shared aspirational capital because I'm always looking forward to the future and goals that I set for myself, whether it be educational, personal, familial. So thank you all for sharing, and I encourage you all to like think about this later on as well. But this is the framework one of the big frameworks we use for Maywood is to build things with this in mind. So viewing students in an asset-based model with things to provide and bring into their classroom and their experiences. So we can close out this activity and move on to the next slide. Okay, so it's still me, I forgot. So next I'll be talking about educational workshops, which is the one I led. So I didn't introduce myself. My name is Christina Cruz. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and we can go into the next slide, please. So these are my lovely committee members. Maywood is done entirely by our program. So we're the Masters of Science in Higher Education program, and this is our cohort. Our cohort each partake in building out Maywood. So these are just my committee members, Paola, Aisha, Jose, Ezra, Christine, Richard, Aaliyah, Jared, Jahi, Tabre, Anais, and Bidi. They all played a major role in bringing Maywood together, and really this is a team effort. So you want to make sure to acknowledge them throughout the presentation. So next slide, please. So committee roles. So my committee was each in charge of a different age group or grade level that they kind of took lead of. So we have our K-2 workshop, which was, all these workshops were really about exploring different careers, but we split them up into K-2, 3rd through 5th, 6 through 8, 9 through 10, 11 through 12. And then we also do have a parent guardians workshop. And so again, mostly exploring careers. We do have some talking about just preparing for the future. We did touch a little bit on financial aid in some of them. And then for the parent guardian, I know there was an emphasis on the 4 systems of higher education and kind of breaking that down for the parents and guardians who did attend. Next slide, please. So our committee goals and accomplishment. So I think one goal that you might see across all of us is that we had to adapt this to a virtual environment. So our goal was really to adapt this in an engaging way, in a meaningful way for students, and then also to provide workshop attendees with resources to use even after the workshop. Some of our really big accomplishments was that we had roughly 81 participants across all of the workshops, which is really great in this virtual environment. We created multiple workshop handouts and placed them into a resource folder to be utilized and viewed even after the fair. There was also discussion that was facilitated to help students identify their strengths and even possible careers across all ages. So even for our kindergartners, there was a conversation on the things they were good at and different careers that they can look at. And then our parent and guardian workshops were presented in both Spanish and English, and there were also handouts available for them in both Spanish and English. Next slide, please. So now I just want to kind of show off what these accomplishments look like. So our resources were placed on a Maywood page that I think Shayleen will talk about a little bit later, more in detail. But this page allowed for us to post our resources that we created. So there's multiple handouts there, some recordings of workshops and additional resources. We also have multiple of our cohort members who opted in to be like in this network for Maywood. So we provide our contact information for those who attended Maywood to have the opportunity to reach out to us in the future if they do need our support. Next slide, please. And these are just some of the handouts. There was a lot of great ones, but these are just some of the ones that I placed on here. So as you can see, there's even a handout on Yoso that was adapted to be a little bit more kid-friendly and something that they can view and understand for themselves. There was information on financial aid, even stuff on thinking about how to finance your education for students who are undocumented, a college resource guide, and a lot more, but these are just a few. Next slide. and day of Maywood workshops. So they were virtual, obviously, and this is kind of what that looked like in this environment. We had our cohort members attend these workshops as well as the students. And this is just a little glimpse of what that went like. So I will go ahead and hand it over to the next presenter.
Thank you, Christina. Hi, everyone. My name is Brianna Magana, pronoun she, her, hers, and I was in charge of the resource fair and volunteer part of the Maywood Fair. So I have here photos of my cohort 12 committee members, but I just want to acknowledge that I also had a lot of cohort 13 members that played a very vital role in my committee. And so I just want to take the time to thank them as well. Unfortunately, I didn't have the opportunity to get all of their professional photos, but for cohort 12, we have Chelsea, Christina, Gavin, James, John, Lupe, Phyllis, and Sean. And so how this committee was divided was we had 4 people that focused on reaching out to different colleges, so like community colleges, CSUs, UCs, and some private or out-of-state universities. And then we had 2 individuals that were in charge of assessment because we focused a lot on getting a pre-assessment of the students and then a post-assessment to see how their learning really expanded or what we could work on for the future. And then we had 2 individuals that kind of helped me with C13 and facilitating what volunteer work needed to be done. So yeah, I kind of explained it a little bit earlier, but yeah, so Chelsea, Christina, Gavin, and James were in charge of contacting all of the colleges. And then Lupe and Phyllis were in charge of assessment, and they created student learning outcomes for the resource fair and for the volunteers. And we called the college representatives volunteers, so just so you are aware. And with that, Lupe and Phyllis came up with the pre and post assessment questions, and they also helped create the swag bags and then find the winners and then distribute those bags as well with Javi's help. Our volunteers, Sean and John, they were in charge of creating different infographics, and once again, they kind of helped with the C13 members. Our C13 members were also considered volunteers in this virtual environment, and they had an instrumental part in helping translate all the infographics and assessments into Spanish, kind of going back to the accessibility aspect that Javi touched on earlier. A lot of people in this community speak Spanish. We wanted to make sure that we gave them as much information as possible in a language that would feel comfortable for them. Our C13 members also created like panel type of questions that the facilitators could ask the reps during the day of. And then our C13 members also helped facilitate the rooms. So, and I'll show a little later in my presentation, but for us, the rooms were 1 C13 member and 1 C12 member that were the facilitators that really handled the whole session. But the C13 members were the ones that were keeping time, that were putting things in the chat, that were answering questions in the chat. They were very on it, very attentive, and my C12 members were great as well. And then some of our goals and accomplishments. So one goal was to have more college representatives in the 2019 fair. Another goal was to make each session accessible for individuals in the community where English was not their primary language. We also wanted, or we hoped that students would attend more than 1 session. We offered 3 sessions. 2 were the same. So you had the opportunity to go to one, and then right after, if you wanted to attend a different room, you could. And then the 3rd session was just financial aid, because that's a big component of college. So we wanted to make sure that everybody had the opportunity to go to that. We wanted or hoped that our participants would respond and take the survey, and we were hoping to have high response ratings. And then another goal was to send out swag bags to the students who participated. And then another goal was to have resources that were accessible in multiple languages. And then our final goal was to educate the college representatives on YOSO's community cultural wealth. And along with that, the accomplishments, my team worked tremendously hard, and they contacted over 300 college representatives or departments, and were able to get 46 college reps to attend, which is great. We had Spanish interpreters for each room, just in case somebody didn't speak English, they were still able to listen to everything in real time. And shout out to my C13 members in my committee and those in other committees that helped out that day. Was great. Overall, we had 56 participants, and it was around 2 or so sessions that each student attended. So that was great. Our post survey had 39 responses. We had 25 swag winners, but only 13 claimed their gifts. But Javi helped us get those shipped out to them. So that was great. And then we did have Spanish and English resources, which I'll show you on the next slide. Yeah, so you see here we have a financial aid infographic that my committee created. And then my committee also helped translate it into Spanish. And then all the way to the far right was the infographic that we sent out to the college reps ahead of time so they could really understand the framework of the fair and how YOSO's community cultural wealth really played a big part and how they can help, you know, reiterate that in their responses with the students. And then this is just, we did a breakdown of all the different types of higher education institutions, and we did in English and in Spanish. And then this is just a glimpse of the day. For confidentiality purposes, I covered up the students' names because they are minors, but if you look on the far left, you can see, I believe it was the admissions room, and then you see the college reps that are there, the students, and then Jose and Gavin were great and they facilitated that room. And then on the right, we have a virtual, sorry, I apologize. It was a virtual like see the campus for the students that they hosted from orientation. So that was great. And then we did have Gabriel do that room. So that was great. And then the very bottom picture is just a fun picture the day of. It was very stressful, but we managed to take some time out of our day to take a cute photo. So I just wanted to throw that in there. And that is it for me.
So Javi again, him, his pronouns, event planning and logistics, and also fundraising and donations. Those were my committees. And we'll go on to the next slide. So my committee members, I had 5 in fundraising and donations, which were Ray, Suleika, Gabby, Jorge, and Montserrat. And then 3 in event planning and logistics, Yarixel, Sean, and Alvin. We go to the next slide. So these are committee roles for each of the 2 committees. Yeah, one is just about planning how the event would unfold, connecting with community partners and also working with the other leads. And then fundraising, again, basically collecting the donations from both C12 and C13, and also collaborating with the other leads. We had opportunity drawings that were a part of that this specific committee, and also incentives that we provided. We go on to the next slide, actually. So I wanted to frame the goals in a couple of ways. So the first one, and I'm going to be touching upon both community cultural wealth and the legacy and goals that that were at the beginning. So thinking about the first one, converting a historical in-person event. So that was a goal. The accomplishment was using the Zoom platform. And what that touches upon is the virtual legacy that was one of those legacy goals. Next is community needs. So this was about keeping in mind the linguistic capital that the community had, so that we did it through Spanish interpretation through Zoom. So C12 and C13 members were served as Spanish interpreters on the day of, and many of the communications, which I'll speak on a couple, and then Shayleen will speak on more of them. We were intentional in making sure that they were both in English and in Spanish. So again, keeping in mind both the linguistic capital and the accessibility. That was also another legacy. Next one, Serial AT&T Maywood Education Project. So that was what has been the Maywood Giving name from